Thanks, Pete. And thank you, Sir John, for the introduction and also being such a driving force for both the Midlands Engine and the Midlands Forest Network. It's great to be with you all here today. As has been said, the Woodland Trust is a proud partner in this, along with the National Forest Company and the Midlands Engine. I grew up in Coventry, not that far down the road, and this is the most important thing that happened in the Midlands today. There was something that happened quite usefully from my point of view last night in Coventry as we go for a FA Cup win for the first time in bloody ages. But I know as a Midlander, the region is rightly proud of its history of innovation, and it's that innovation that sat at the heart of the first industrial revolution, where we saw real change. It was a time when the furnaces roared, the steam engines raced, and the chimney stacks rose to the sky. The region's products and genius was felt the world over, and it was one to be incredibly proud of. But we also know, with 2020 vision of hindsight, some of that came at a cost, not least the pollution that in effect caused and earned the Black Country its very name. But times have changed, and we look back at the past with a fondness which we can learn from. So whether you're an employee or an employer, whether you're a customer or a seller, or someone who lives in the Midlands or merely visits, the places that we work, rest and play have changed from what we need of them for today. There are new opportunities to be grabbed, and there are new challenges to rise to, as we've heard from Sir John. Now, as Chief Executive of the Woodland Trust, the UK's largest woodland nature conservation charity, I know as a member of the third sector that we want to and can play an important role as the region moves to the forefront of that innovation that will rise to the challenge of the twin threats of climate change and biodiversity loss. And we're fortunate that we wield one of nature's strongest weapons. The strongest weapon in this fight that some might say is a humble tree, you might expect me to say is an incredible tree. It's a cleaner of the air that we breathe, shown to pull out the particulates around the schools of our school children. It's a capturer of carbon from the atmosphere, already locking away millions of tonnes by the mature trees that we have today, and even more to come in the trees and the woods that we will produce in the future. It's a lifter of spirits, whether that's the physical or mental well-being of our communities, shown time after time that nature and green spaces can reduce stress and alleviate and tackle things like depression. And it's also a driver of nature's recovery. That single oak, whether it's the oak of Sherwood or the oaks across the Midlands, we know they hold a huge wealth of wildlife themselves. A single oak hosting 2,300 other species is a habitat in itself. And we talk about investment. Well, if you are holding the purse strings and can help to unlock the value, then I would make one plea with regard to that humble tree or that incredible tree. It is a capital asset that grows over time. And not all capital assets do that. It grows over time for our residents, it grows over time for our visitors, and it grows over time for the employees and customers that we all hold dear. But despite the overwhelming benefits that we get and the scale of the challenge, the current reality, as Sir John says, is the Midlands gateway to a huge opportunity because we don't have enough of them already. Woodland cover in the Midlands is too low. It needs to get better. It currently sits below the national average at just 7.4%. For the region to play its part in meeting the government's target of 16.5% woodland and tree canopy cover by 2050, there needs to be an opportunity to be taken to create thousands of hectares of new woodland and establish millions of new trees. And in doing so, we'll create a sense of place for all. A network of woods across all parts of the Midlands, stretching from the Welsh borders to the Lincolnshire coast. A Midlands forest network connecting the urban with the rural. A Midlands forest network learning from the spirit of the innovations of the past and driving with spirit the innovations of the future. And a Midlands forest network that connects individuals, communities and businesses together. Now, restoration of the scale that we're talking about won't be achieved through simple incremental increases. The urgency of the need is too great, the scale of the opportunity too high. It requires bold initiatives, and those bold initiatives have to deliver fundamental transformative change at a landscape scale, which is why the Midlands Forest Network is unapologetically bold. Now, I've spoken about the access and the evidence around the access to nature and its importance in bringing that to people's health and well-being. But we also know that that access is not equal. The most affluent areas in England have up to 5 times the number of parks and green spaces than those of the most deprived. So not only will the Midlands Forest Network drive woodland cover up, it will identify those areas of inequity and support the engagement of underserved and underrepresented communities to develop and promote good practice and ensure their views are reflected as we deliver on a strategy. Now, the Woodland Trust recently developed the so-called Tree Equity Score, and it doesn't matter where you are in the UK, you can go online and search Tree Equity Score and find out how well your area is doing. It represents, from my perspective, the frontier of this type of work. It stands as a powerful tool to allow for the focusing and the delivery of trees' many benefits to those that need them the most. We know from experience the power of a sapling in the hand of a child planted today will have a positive connection for that child with that place, with nature, and also create something that will benefit for generations to come. And it's not just the 11 million residents of the Midlands and the communities that they represent that will benefit. As Sir John said, our economy is underpinned by nature, and our businesses are critical for that underpinning and are underpinned themselves by that nature. Green growth is critical for us to help decarbonise the region and build a sustainable and resilient economy going forward. As has been demonstrated by our partners, transforming the landscape with trees can also transform the local economy. It attracts investment, it attracts places where people want to work, it attracts people into the area for places to live, and it attracts supply chains, protecting them, and customers. The Midlands Forest Network wants to turbocharge this by bringing partners together to share their individual strengths and coordinate those efforts so the sum of their parts is greater added value for all. It can also bring investment that's needed to help finance the scale of habitat creation and management that's required. And I'm hoping that some of you in the room can help with that as well. This first phase of the Midlands Forest Network has been generously supported by the National Lottery Heritage Fund, DEFRA and the Midlands Engine. And we would like to thank them for contributing to such a strategic programme and hope and welcome you all into that vision of growing a web connected of woodland habitats for nature, for people and business. Now, there are already 3 flagship woodland initiatives across the Midlands working on these 3 pillars of sustainability. We now have the opportunity to link those initiatives together, not only physically, but also intellectually. In doing so, we can develop a regional structure that brings partners together to identify the new opportunities that are in front of us, build the more resource that we need to deliver, and unlock the funding that can be often so hard for any individual local organisation to achieve. The result is a prize worth gaining. The result will be a network of new woodlands and other habitats stretching across the region that link our forests together and bring woodlands closer to the communities that need them most, building resilience in both the woods themselves and the communities. This 2-year development phase has been led by 3 partners, of which they bring different perspectives and different expertise. The Midlands engine brings its connections, its influence, and its incredible convening power. How important is the people in this room if you think about the collective power that is in here today? The Woodland Trust, I'm pleased to say, brings our 50 years of experience and expertise at delivering scale across the UK and across multiple regions. And our partners, the National Forest Company, who you will hear from, bring their 30 years of experience of delivering a model that shows it can actually be done and can be done well on the ground. A key task for this development phase will be to create the framework and the environment for all partners to be able to make their contribution and to deliver impact and scale. The first 2 years sets the groundwork for that to happen. Now, we want to grow the network of partners that can provide the diverse range of views and input so it becomes strong and robust going forward. We want the input of regional partners who can come from a wide range of sectors and, if I'm honest, are not simply a function of us talking to ourselves. We need to broaden out to business, we need to broaden out to the health sectors, we need to broaden out to a whole range of others. Strong partnership, as Sir John says, is the only way we will collectively develop and deliver something that is truly sustainable for the future. Building on the support that is in the room, and I have every confidence that we'll hear about more of that from today, how can you not be hopefully inspired to harness what is the greatly heightened awareness of the transformative power of woods and trees that the Woodland Trust has the pleasure of seeing in the eyes of the individual, of the community, and at all levels of government. And we're increasingly seeing it in the boardrooms of both big business and small business, recognising the value to them and their longevity. I have absolute confidence that we can deliver and develop a partnership that puts the region in the forefront of providing the solutions, using that innovative spirit to tackle the range of challenges that society as a whole faces. So the Midlands can be that place where the art of the possible is turned from words into action, where climate and nature crises, where public health challenges are tackled on the ground for the people and for the nature that needs them in the places where the people and the nature needs it. And if we do that, then actually the Midlands will be an even better place to live, be an even better place to work, and be an even better place to invest in. And as a Midlander, what's not to like? Thank you very much. I think I officially hand over to my colleague and friend, John Everitt, who's Chief Executive of the National Forest Company.
Darren, thank you. And it's taken a long time to get to this point. Maybe 2 years? No, it's 2 years. Maybe 2 years is a long time. And it's just so good to have everyone in the room to feel like the Midlands Forest Network is becoming a thing. And we are trying to create something new here. And when you're trying to do that, people have to go one step beyond what they would probably do as part of their day job. We're trying to create something extraordinary, and that does require us to take that big leap into the unknown. So thanks to everyone who's got us to this point. Let's see where we get to in 2 years' time. So, I'll start with the vision, because the vision is really what we're talking about here, that we don't have a Midlands Forest Network yet. We have a vision and we have an inspiration in our minds of where we want to get to. And it's important that we hold that very dear, I think, because it's going to be the thing that drives us forward. And, one of the things that I'm heartened by is that vision is partly rooted, as Darren mentioned, in something that we as National Forest Company have been doing for the last 30 years, which is trying to demonstrate that you can integrate woods and trees into a very busy landscape in part of lowland England, where you've got industry, you've got transport, you've got housing, you've got other habitats, you've got a whole range of things, farming, etc., going on. And Yet you can increase tree and woodland cover, which now is beyond 22% from its beginnings of around 6% in the National Forest area. So we can do this stuff. It's not easy. It takes funding, it takes strategic approaches, and it takes resource and buy-in. And what I'm heartened by is the kind of strength of the partners here today and the strength of what I think we can grow into a really impressive partnership around this vision. And as I say, we don't have a Midlands Forest Network, so I'm going to have to talk conceptually. So please forgive the schematic here, which is illustrative of the kind of thing that we're trying to do, which is create something that is about expanding and connecting and engaging and managing and championing woods and trees across the Midlands. So we know we have, and they're not all on this map, but we know we have some real hubs and nodes that already exist. And what we need to do is harness those as the reservoirs from which we will expand outwards, right the way through our towns and cities, into our surrounding countryside, and make those connections and those corridors that are going to mean that wildlife can move and adapt to a changing climate, that will mean that people will have access to woods and trees on their doorstep, and will mean that businesses can thrive because they can adapt to that climate change imperative, and people want to come here to live, work, and enjoy. So there is a real opportunity through this kind of approach, but it does have to be really strategic. And if we take these kind of principles here, I think they're the kind of things that will underpin the way we have to work. You know, we have to be ambitious. The East and West Midlands have been quite polarised historically. This is a chance to really bring the two together. Nature doesn't really see those boundaries. I don't think we see our hedgehogs talking in a Brummie accent over here and a different accent in Lincolnshire. But actually we can have that sense of the Midlands as a whole. And, you know, I'm very passionate about the Midlands as opposed to the North and the South in the way that government speaks. The Midlands often get really lost, and this is a chance to position us as a place for investment and a place of opportunity. We have to be genuinely strategic. We have to make sure the evidence flows, and this is an evidence-led programme. We have, as I mentioned, very busy land use here. We've got to still be able to farm our best and productive land. We've got to be able to put housing in place. We've got to make sure that our new industry, our green industries, can come here and thrive. We've got to make space for other habitats and other wildlife. So there's a whole raft of things we need to do here, and that means we need to be strategic about where we put our woods and trees to make sure that it has maximum benefit. We have to be collaborative in a sense that, yes, we are often talking to each other as a very friendly partnership on the whole, but can we get new partners around the table who will challenge us? And can we get new partners around the table who will benefit most? And some of those are right at the community level. Some of those are partnerships that we've been trying to really get right for a long time. Darren mentioned the health sector, and there are others that can immensely benefit from this kind of initiative. And we have to be really inclusive, and that goes with the partnership. We have to take that step of engaging with those partners, however difficult it might be, however challenging it might be, but the benefits are significant. And then ultimately, and this is a test, this is a challenge for us trying to lead this process, we have to be realistic. If the Midlands Forest Network doesn't add value to what you folks are doing, it's just not going to work. So we really have to make sure that what we can do at a pan-Midlands level is going to be useful and add value to what happens and can work at a local and slightly larger regional level. So that's the real test for us. Now, the way of doing that is to make sure that we tie into all of these amazing strategies and initiatives that are happening now. We've got local nature recovery working. We've got biodiversity net gain starting to kick in. We've got planning policies. We've got a whole range of land use policies in general. Now, we've got to be relevant to those, and we've got to be able to integrate into those. Now, the Midlands Forest Network as a concept is not really new. You know, there's been lots of initiatives over the years that have had this idea that we have to be more bold in the sense of nature across the Midlands. I was reading the original new Midlands Forest report a couple of weeks ago for the National Forest when it kicked off in the late 80s. And that report actually sets out a number of big forested opportunities in the Midlands and how they could start to create some of that ambition. So, this is stuff that was happening years and years ago, and much of that work is still relevant. The National Forest work has still got more to go, and some of those other initiatives haven't had the potential to really expand in the way that they could. So that's work still to be done. That history is there. We've had things like regional spatial strategies that try to do some of this more strategic planning across the East and West Midlands. That work's still relevant. There's some very useful background there that can feed in. We've also had big thinking from others, people like Birmingham Tree People and lots of others as well, setting out proposals across the Midlands to try and look at what we can do at this scale. And I'm so pleased that we've got the Midlands engine behind something here that is bringing business to the table to think about green growth and put what we want to do from a natural environment point of view into the context of green growth, because it's absolutely such a good fit. So, we've got all these drivers that have happened historically pointing in the right direction. I believe we are right at a moment to bring this together. Having said that, my clicker's jamming. Let's see whether it works. Yeah, I would have thought the cursor's working, but no. We might have to reload. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to produce a whole range of outputs through the work that we've currently got in this 2-year phase, and they will be the starting point for bringing together this concept of Midlands Forest Network. So the key nodes, most of them in place, but new ones that we can also start to establish. And critically, not just the nodes, but the corridors between them. How do we make those corridors work? And how do we make them work cross-boundary and cross-authority, when at the moment a lot of our focus is on those smaller scale areas? We'll have a baseline map of that will be publicly available for everyone to use and input to, and it will be a dynamic process as well. This can't really be fixed. It's going to change over time as we see delivery happen, as we see other land use and other strategic priorities come in. But we can set out what we think that Midlands-wide concept looks like now and morph it over time. And as Darren mentioned, we've got some interesting methodologies that we can put in place behind that mapping that can give us the layers that help to demonstrate how they fit into both what you're doing at a local level, but also into some of these wider sectors to make the Midlands Forest Network relevant to their work also. And as I mentioned before, these cross-boundary connections is really critical. And when we look at national targets for things like trees and woodlands, how they get spatially delivered at regional scale, how that then filters down to a local level is complicated, and it's a big leap. And it's the same the other way up. Do people's ambitions, when you add them up locally, get anywhere near what we want to achieve on a national scale? And we have a national target, 16.5% by 2050, that was just mentioned. But the important element of that is that it's not going to be 16.5% everywhere. So what is the Midlands contribution realistically, given our landscape and given our opportunity? And we still have to work that through. Similarly, with partnerships and audiences, we've got a range of outputs that we'll be working through, engaging with communities and wider partnerships to bring those forward. Some of those are things like audience development plans that will help to bring partners to the table at the Midlands level that then will inform what you can do at local level to engage, and that will be an iterative process. Where we've got really keen partners who want to engage but don't know how to, we can make those contacts and communications work. And where we've got pan-regional partnerships that can start to engage in their local areas, we can filter that into that local process. And there's a whole historic and cultural dimension to that as well, where we've got new audiences who may not have those historic connections with woods and trees, but may have their own historic connections from a different culture. How do we bring those in to make sure we can be relevant to some of those new audiences? And we'll do some work in that respect to help to set that agenda. Most importantly, we'll have a forum for the Midlands Forest Network, which will be our communication tool. That will be a way of getting dialogue going between all partners, a way of sending information up and down the chain and starting to build that dialogue around best practice, opportunity, funders, policy makers, and start to get the communication going so we can all learn from each other and stop reinventing the wheel. I mean, that will be super for what we can do across the Midlands. And also critically, into the policy makers, so into social policy, into transport policy, into big infrastructure policy. We want to be able to influence at that scale and share that right across the Midlands. And then into the financial realm, obviously a lot of this needs to be funded, and how are we going to get those new funds in? Well, we've got opportunity through new investment, through private finance, and work that we can do through this project will help to explore that at the regional level, again, to be informed by and to inform what a lot of you are already doing locally. And that's the same for big strategic funders like Lottery and others who want to be able to bring forward schemes in a timely way across the region and make sure that they talk to each other and learn from each other. Again, we can convene some of that work here as Midlands Forest Network. And I do believe that at a larger scale, at a Midland scale, we can develop the offer at something that's meaningful to many of those funders. And I don't know about you folks, but a lot of the people we're talking to around green and private finance, they're not interested in someone as small as National Forest. You know, we're too small to sit in that arena. Actually, we need to have bigger scale. So collaboratively, we can start to build something that can operate in a much larger capacity. And that also works for the kind of administrative side of it. It makes it economically viable. And then the kind of blend of public and private, how do we make that work well together, again, across different boundaries and different geographies? I think there's a lot of convening work to do. So those are some of the deliverables, but then we've also got what I would see as advocacy work that we can do to promote the network. And some of that is work that partners have already been doing, but also some of the work that you can support and contribute to by making sure that we do put the Midlands on the map, that we make the case for the need here as opposed to elsewhere in the country for investment, and that what we can do through the kind of policy arena here is demonstrate really strong good practice with really strong outcomes so that we can get more of that and get into a real virtuous circle. We know we're in the realms of local nature recovery strategies and biodiversity net gain. We've got opportunities to really make that work well for us. If we get it wrong, we've missed a massive opportunity here. So, you know, I think, again, sharing around the tables and around the network, how we make that work so well for us will be a really critical moment. And I mentioned wider plans. You know, a lot of these plans, they're not specific to local areas. They have to work at a larger scale. And so if we've got a big strategic vision for the Midlands, we can place these strategies and these other land uses in the right places so we're not playing catch up with where we want to put our woodland habitats. So that's where we're getting to. We've got a 2-year development phase with many of those outputs coming forward. But critically, we want to build momentum during that time. And I think momentum is going to be a really important element to this. I hope to be able to stand up in a couple of years' time and show you the Midlands Forest Network in all its glory and all the amazing facets of it, all the case studies and examples that are starting to come through, the oven-ready projects that are next off the blocks for funding. We can't do that yet, but that's the next future phase. We'll only really be able to do that if we can add value, if we can get your buy-in, if we can make sure that what we do here is something that is really visionary, that actually fits in the landscape and that will give us those amazing benefits. So, you know, that's where we need that momentum to build. And much of that will be convened through what's happening in the Midlands Engine. Also, there are some real strategic groups looking at wider natural capital issues within the Midlands Engine. So we're delighted that that is an umbrella for convening us all. So we'll get into some of the detail of this later in the day, but I just want to really leave you with that sense of thinking where we might be in 2 years' time. So imagine if we can map this network, if we can raise that potential for people to expect and be championing for woods and trees on their doorstep, spanning across the Midlands, giving this interconnected habitat that really does start to connect. And if I'm really ambitious, it connects up into the northern forest. It connects downwards into the next raft of woodlands and trees initiatives in the south and in the east and west of the country. So, there's a real opportunity for us here to trailblaze something, and I really hope we can get your energy and enthusiasm behind it to make it happen. Thank you.